Today we want to talk about using gray or muted color. And there's two things we want to focus on. One is without muting our color at least a little bit, our colors or our painting lacks color harmony. Also without some muting or using gray colors, all the colors will be screaming at you from the painting. So if I mute all my colors at least slightly and use some gray colors in the right areas, then the focal point where I choose to use stronger color, maybe not gray it at all, will really make a statement.
Now when we're thinking of using grayer colors or muted colors, we still want to think in terms of color. If I'm just thinking of flat gray or using a black or a Payne's gray, I will get a gray that's just colorless. What we want is muted color, not necessarily gray. So even if something looks very gray, I can start more neutral by using complementary colors and then warm it or cool it. Then you're still thinking more color. I mean, technically you can do that with black too. You can gray, add white to it, get it the right value of gray, and then add a little color to it. But it's not the same as using complementary colors. Complementary colors have more color harmony to them with the colors you're using. Plus you just learn about the colors more if you're using complements or close to the complement to get a gray color. So when we think of the complements, if I have my red here, this is Cad Red Deep. When I mix two complements together to get a muted color I'm seeing, whether it's a muted red or muted green, the key is to get both of them the same value that you want that color to be. I don't want a real dark red and a real light green and try and mix them together. Get them the same value and then blend them a little bit. So if I want more of a red, only slightly muted, and there is no correct color to match if we're using photography or even outside. It's a matter of deciding how muted you want the color and using a variety of stronger colors around it to make it look more muted, or using a muted color to make the stronger colors look stronger. Because if all the colors in the painting are bright and intense, everything's screaming at you. Or if everything is very gray, there's no color that jumps out at all that makes any kind of statement. So I want a variety of muted and strong colors. I'll usually decide which one I want to dominate in the painting. Really brighter colors or more muted colors. But I do want both in every painting. So you can see here as I blend these together, and if I get a bit more of a stronger red on the edge, I go from very strong on the edges and gradually gets more muted. You can do gray charts with complementary colors, having, I don't know, 12 squares across. Square on each end is straight Viridian or straight Cad Red Deep on the other end, and you gradually add green on the red side till you get to the middle. Then it's half and half. And gradually add red to the green till you get to the middle, and that's half and half, and you get more of a muted gray. And it gives you an idea of what they do together. Now this is all one value. My Viridian's a little on the light side, but you can see the myriad of muted color you can get from both of them. And I don't always have to use the complement. I can use on the color wheel the color next to the complement. So instead of the Viridian, which is technically a blue-green, it's not really a green. I could use blue and yellow to make just a green, or a yellow-green even, and it would do the trick. But play around with the idea of muted colors where you're not just trying to copy what you see in the photograph. Like if I see a bunch of yellow rocks, orange rocks, I want to have a variety of, well, I want the right value, but I want orange rocks that have a little bit of blue in it, a little more blue, and mostly blue, but still be orange rocks. And you can do the same thing with all the complements. You can get a Cad Yellow Light and Deoxazine Purple. I add a little white to my Deoxazine when I squeeze it out. Dalarowny makes a gray violet. That's Deoxazine Purple and white, so it's already has white added to it. want to get these kind of the same value. And I can gradually pull the, oops, wrong brush, pull the yellow into the violet, get a slightly muted violet right in there to stronger, and same thing with the yellow. And it gives you a range, and again, doing charts kind of helps. Yellow squares on one end of the charts and violet on the other, straight violet, and then gradually add a little yellow to the violet till you get to the center, and it's more half and half. Same thing with the yellow, gradually add a touch of violet till you get to the center. And then you go down value-wise. That's the strongest without any white, and then you gradually lighten as you go down, because it's the value that matters. And the charts help, but they don't put anything into context. In other words, charts are just charts. But if you do small paintings where you're practicing muting your colors, graying your colors, and you're doing a painting where you try to see how muted you can get your colors and still have some color in it, then the same painting, mix the colors, see how strong you can get the colors without muting much, and then do one where it's half and half, deciding how much strong color you need and how much muted color next to it to make the stronger color work better. Because it's real important, even on strong colors, to have some variation of muted color somewhat next to it to make it more effective. And we tend to do one or the other, too gray all over or too intense all over. And the last one here, if I do a orange and ultramarine blue, I'll lighten the blue to get it closer to the orange value, and then just pull some together. And again, it gets grayer in the middle, pull some of that orange in a little more. And we're talking about real subtle gray variations. And in the painting, again, it doesn't have to be the exact complement. It can be the color on either side of the complement you can use. So instead of, if I have orange rocks and I want to mute it with blue, I can use a little blue violet instead of blue or blue green. And generally you can also think in terms of just warm and cool. If I have a real warm color and I want to gray it, I can just add almost any cool color to it and it's going to gray it. Most of the time, I'm adding a little bit of the complement to everything I mix. Just when I want it more gray, I add more complement. But I always add at least a tiny bit. And it may not be much at all, but it's generally enough to knock it down. So towards the end of the painting, I can decide where I want some areas of just real strong color, no complement at all. And that becomes real effective then, because I have a color in certain places, like in the focal point, where it's very bright, not muted at all, and it's going to jump out because I've muted everything a little bit. And the further towards the edge of a painting, the more muted I want it, and the closer to the focal point, I can keep the colors a little stronger. So this is my thumbnail. I played around with some that are a little more vertical, slightly more horizontal, and I came to almost a square as a better composition. A lot of times for practice, I will decide I'm just going to do 30 8x10s the next couple of weeks just to work on values or color or whatever. So I'm always forcing the composition in the photograph, or if I'm outside, into that 8x10. You can do that also. But this way I'm finding, I think, the best composition, or at least a good composition that fits that photograph. And what I have drawn here, and I use a 9B pencil. The darker the graphite, the better. Again, a wolf or a carbon pencil is very good. But the viewer's eye enters and flows around the whole painting through that dark pattern. And the dark pattern starts in here, flows this way through the shrubbery. There's a lot of sunlight on the shrubbery, but it's a vertical plane. It's generally going to be darker than the flat plane. And if it doesn't look that way, I'm going to force it that way, because that makes the painting look three-dimensional, and it helps us to simplify. Now there's a lot of light colored flowers, which I'll put in there, But before the flowers, that has to be a dark plane because it's vertical shapes. Not shadow, just dark. Same thing with the trees back in here, they're vertical. The ivy on the porch thing there is a dark, again, compared to the slanted hill and the flat plane and the sky, that's going to be a dark. And then the shape of the house. And I probably did 3 of these before I got the one I want. The first thumbnail I always do is just to kind of get a feel for what I'm trying to do. And I always scratch that. So it usually takes me 3. And when I finally decided on this one, I probably spent maybe 8-9 minutes on it and a few minutes on the other. So they're not something you want to spend a lot of time on. But this is what I draw from on the canvas, because this is where I've made the changes, where I've simplified things, and where I pick up that shadow pattern. Real important to get that. For a long time it won't make sense, and you'll draw it on the thumbnail, and you'll try and draw on the canvas from the thumbnail, and it won't work. But stick with it. You know, combine the photograph and the thumbnail. And pretty soon you're going to start relying on that thumbnail more than anything, because it's the painting that matters, not the photograph. And how I simplify and rethink the photograph shows up in the thumbnail.